We have Jane Graham's affidavit. We've interviewed the former foreman of the Oklahoma City grand jury. We've interviewed police officers. We have a very clear picture of what happened that day. A very clear picture. And in fact, Jane, if memory serves, I've interviewed her in years. I remember that she even saw some of the people that she saw working in the building planting gray sticks of butter with wires who had federal passes as maintenance people on some of the news footage. And I've talked to other witnesses that said they saw those men in there. And then on the news, after the bomb had gone off, they'd say, well, that's him. Well, that's him. John Doe number 2, Iraqis involved, all protected by the U.S. government. Jane Graham is a 9th floor survivor of the Murrah Federal Building bombing in Oklahoma City in '95. She's made a video affidavit after she watched the video cover-up in Oklahoma. In that video, she recognized seeing 2 men who were caught on camera walking hurriedly away from the building after the bombing, holding walkie-talkies. She says that she had noticed these men in the building prior to the bombing wearing General Services Administration maintenance uniforms, that she did not recognize GSA employees. And we have her affidavit up on Infowars.com. Now, there's a new article out by Red Dirt Report, a great outfit out of Oklahoma, and it boils down. Again, she's one of scores of survivors and witnesses that basically tell the same story. Okay? And now you have Terry Nichols saying in a sworn federal affidavit that McVeigh was a black op operator. You have McVeigh separately saying one day it'll come out the government did this. The ATF 30 seconds after the bombing in full bomb gear telling medics, patch me up, I was on the 9th floor. She was on the 9th floor. It was almost completely destroyed. Asinine. While Oklahoma and the rest of the world respectively remember the 168 people who died in the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, one survivor of April 19, 1995 blast, Jane Graham, wants her questions about what really happened that day answered once and for all. Graham, a native of Chicago, was working for HUD office on the 9th floor of the Murrah building that morning, told Red Dirt Report that there were a lot of strange things going on in the weeks leading up to the bombing, things that she shared numerous times with federal agents, things she felt were ignored, this including the presence of maintenance workers she did not recognize, military people in the parking garage, and more unusual activity. But one of the key figures, the bomber himself, Tim McVeigh, was spotted in the federal building on a number of occasions, and by multiple witnesses, I would add. It was a couple of weeks before the bombing. I had seen McVeigh in the building prior to the bombing around the first week of April. McVeigh, Graham said, rode up the elevator while she was heading to her office on that morning. And we have the former head of Air Force Weapons Development saying the building was blown out, not in. And you have the seismographs and the blast points. I mean, it just goes on and on. Hoppy Heidelberg, the grand juror foreman, being threatened by the FBI, and cops being killed who spoke out. I mean, it's unbelievable. And I'm going to have her back up in the next few weeks for a full hour. She's very gracious, but I hate to even cover this without going over all the evidence. Let me just read a few more lines, and we're going to her. She said, McVeigh was in military fatigues. I looked at him and said, hi, and he simply looked straight ahead. He got off the 6th floor. I turned to someone else in the elevator and said, well, he's certainly not very friendly. Another time, Graham said, he was in the elevator again and got off on the 9th floor where the Secret Service and BATF offices were located. Another unusual event Graham recalled was on Friday, April 14, 1995. She had parked in the Murrah parking garage, and she noticed 3 men standing together on the south side of the parking area. One of the men was holding what looked like floor plans. She said at first she thought about the recent phone problems that had been plaguing the building and problems with gas fumes in the area. I watched them carefully, Graham said. They were standing behind a green light station wagon, like an old country squire wagon. It was filthy, and I couldn't see the plate on it. As she watched the 3 men, one of whom was wearing dark clothing and 2 wearing short sleeves and jeans, one of the men held a stack or a roll of what appeared to be telephone wire. And then we'll have her finish up with what she was told, and she talked to other people, military personnel, people that said they were FBI, people she'd not seen before. It just goes on and on. People approached her, identified themselves as FBI, wanted to know about the men. I mean, it just goes on and on. And Jane Graham on record's been all over national TV. She was up there on the 9th floor. She's one of the survivors. And Jane Graham, we appreciate your courage, and you're speaking out again, and it's good to have you on with us.
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, go ahead.
No. I mean, you go ahead. I mean, millions are listening. Tell folks what really happened.
Well, I think you've covered a lot of it, but going back to, I'll try and keep it, the most important part was the Friday before when I saw the men down below. I was asked about the three men, and I did tell them that they wanted to know what I thought they were, and I said, well, I would take the man in charge being a surveyor and military. I said that was the first two things that came to my mind when I saw them, and they had, and I gave them a visualizing the size of the plans that I watched them, which they were holding up, and I was told that that is exactly the size of plans that plans are when they are, in fact, drawings of the building and the garage area. And the third gentleman was tall, very, very nice-looking man. Dark hair. His hair came right to his collar. He had very dark eyes, dark hair. He wore a black cowboy hat with a silver trim on the hat, and he had black jeans, black boots, black shirt. And I really got a good look at him. He turned away from me and went to the north wall and was having a cigarette. And he did not want me to watch him.
And, of course, we now know, I mean, you saw him on the news, Andreas Stossmeyer,
yes,
the son of a top SS general,
yes,
is an admitted Black Ops commander for German and U.S. intelligence and was at Elohim City being run by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yes. And he that was who I identified later on. I also identified one of the men when I was finally shown some pictures, not by the FBI, not by the police, but through a private investigator who was giving me, and I identified Gary Hunt as one of the gentlemen that I saw in the building the day before and the morning of the bombing, with another man who was about 5'8", light brownish blonde hair, very poor, very, very bad complected. When they both came out of the stairwell, they looked directly at me, and then they bent their heads down and turned around the corner to go around the hallway past GSA, because that is an outside door there to the outside of the building on the the west end of the building. So I was very much aware of them, and then I was going to go upstairs, and I thought it was odd that they came down the stairwell, and as I said, they were going quite quickly, and I was talking to somebody else about the fact that I had seen some maintenance men, some outside maintenance men. And it wasn't just right after that, when I was waiting at the elevator, a gentleman came up to me and said he was talking to some others, and he said, I'm from the FBI, and someone told me that you have seen two maintenance men. And I said, no, I said, I didn't. And of course, at that time, I was thinking whether they were talking about the elevator, which we'd had a problem with, or the phone company. And it wasn't registering to me at all about associating them with the two GSA dressed maintenance men. And it was only later on, after I saw a video and saw the two of those men, I realized this is the men that they were referring to, who somebody obviously had told them. I assume it was the men that I passed, that I had seen them. So that, I think, and that in itself probably saved my life at that point, because Terry Yakey had seen so much, and he was killed. A lot of people were murdered because of what they saw or what they wrote or what they did. And
yeah, let me stop you there. Terrence Yakey was Cop of the Year that year. He went in, local Oklahoma City cop, saved a bunch of people, and the last person he talked to was his partner. He'd hidden evidence of it being an inside job in a storage locker outside town. He'd been told to get off the case by his superiors. And the last phone call to his partner said, "I'm being tailed by feds." And then he was found murdered and tortured.
That's right. That is correct. And I did go. I wrote a letter to Stephen Jones. I wrote a letter to the FBI. I wrote one to my doctor. and another person, and I told them exactly what I saw. I gave them descriptions of the men. I gave them what they were wearing, everything I could about them and what had occurred. And I never did hear anything from anyone regarding from the FBI or the police about looking at pictures of anyone, trying to identify anyone. And I did talk to one attorney, and he said, well, I know the sketch artists, but the police, they're just really, really good. We'll get a sketch done. I said, fine. Never heard from him again after that. It just dropped. That was the end of that discussion. I went with Debbie Nakanashi to Washington several times